I'm a 27-year-old woman, and this story begins in the kind of town where nothing really happens, which means when anything does, everyone knows about it before dinner. The kind of place where your dentist remembers your high school GPA and your kindergarten teacher still waves at your parents in the grocery store. In that town, reputations weren't built, they were assigned, and mine was always stuck in the shadow of my older sister, Sabrina. Sabrina was the golden girl. She had the kind of confidence that made adults nod approvingly and classmates compete for her attention. Even at 13, she had the posture of a prom queen. By the time she was 17, everyone assumed she'd marry rich, live on a hilltop, and host fundraisers in floor-length gowns. Me? I liked terrariums. I volunteered at the local library and knew the difference between 8 types of moss, which apparently made me eccentric, her favorite word to throw around whenever people asked about me. Starting in middle school, Sabrina used to toss little jabs that she passed off as humor. "You're totally going to end up alone with cats and cardigans," she'd laugh in front of her friends. I didn't think it was funny and I never laughed, but she kept saying it. People just said that's how siblings are. A little teasing, a little rivalry. But she didn't stop when we grew up. By the time I turned 20, I had started dating Daniel. He was soft-spoken and smart, with a dry sense of humor and a habit of fixing anything broken with the kind of patience only engineers have. We got each other. He knew what to say when I went quiet. He even bought me an antique book press for my birthday, because he remembered I once mentioned it in passing. The first time Sabrina met him, she looked him up and down and said, "Is this your professor or your boyfriend?" She never let up after that. She'd drop passive insults about his looks, his job, even his taste in shoes. Once during a family dinner, she leaned across the table to ask him if he'd ever considered wearing contacts so he could stop looking like a retired librarian. I don't know why we tolerated it, but we did. For a while. When Daniel and I split, purely because of logistics after he took a job offer across the country, she threw a wine night with her friends to toast my return to singlehood. She even posted a group photo of them clinking glasses, captioned, "Freedom looks good on some people." Sabrina never stayed single longer than a few weeks. Every new relationship was a production. Elaborate social media reveals, family introductions with speeches, breakup announcements that sounded like Oscar acceptance monologues. It all felt fake, but she ate up the attention. 2 years ago, she met Nathan. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He had this easy way of speaking that made you want to lean in just to hear the end of his sentences. At our first family dinner together, Sabrina barely let him speak. She spent the evening rattling off his salary, how many carats were in her ring, and how she had finally won. She said that part twice, loud enough for everyone to hear. But while Sabrina was performing, I noticed something strange. Nathan kept glancing at me, not flirtatiously, but like he was trying to place me, like he recognized something. He smiled a few times, politely, but I could tell his attention kept drifting. I chalked it up to him being overwhelmed. She was overwhelming. 3 weeks later, she organized a surprise brunch for the family. We all showed up thinking it was just a Sunday thing, but it was actually her engagement announcement. Of course, she handed out the wedding invitations like she was the host of a game show, dramatic pauses and all. When it came to me, she didn't hand it over. She just placed it on my plate, upside down, with a sticky note attached that said, "Don't wear green. It washes you out." Everyone laughed. That note wasn't the worst thing she had ever done to me, but for some reason, that was the moment it all clicked. She wasn't just teasing me. She didn't just enjoy being the center of attention, she needed it. And anyone who didn't orbit around her was a threat. I didn't open the invitation that day. I excused myself before dessert, went home, and sat on my porch until the sun went down. And I decided I wasn't going to let her win this time. Not by showing up in a dress she approved of. Not by smiling through another celebration where I was made to feel invisible. If she wanted a perfect wedding, she was going to have to earn it. And if she was so sure I'd always end up alone, I was going to show her exactly what being alone didn't mean. Starting with making sure she'd never forget what it felt like to be publicly humiliated by someone she thought would stay quiet forever. She wanted a performance. I was finally ready to give her one. I didn't rush anything. The kind of revenge that sticks isn't loud, it's careful. It's slow. I wasn't going to throw a tantrum or stage some dramatic protest. I wanted Sabrina to fall flat on the stage she built for herself, and for it to look like she tripped on her own gown. I RSVP'd yes to the wedding the next morning. I added a short note saying I'd love to help with the floral arrangements since I'd taken a few hobby classes. She replied with a short message, "Oh wow, you care now." I left it on read. That was the last direct message I responded to from her. I didn't block her, but I stopped replying altogether. A few days later, I reached out to Nathan. I said I was helping with the seating chart and needed to double check some details. He agreed to meet at a cafe in town. It was mid-morning on a Thursday. The cafe was half empty. I ordered a tea. He got a black coffee. He looked nervous at first, stiff posture, arms crossed. But 20 minutes in, something shifted. He let out a breath, leaned forward, and started talking. He said he hadn't had a real conversation in weeks that didn't revolve around save the dates or flower options. He said Sabrina was intense, that she planned their entire relationship like it was being filmed, that everything had to be photo-worthy. When he brought up needing a break or space, she'd accuse him of being ungrateful for her love. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. He asked if I remembered Daniel. I nodded, and he gave a strange smile. Turns out he and Daniel were roommates during college, 2 years. They kept in touch occasionally. He said Daniel talked about me all the time back then. Now I paid attention to little things. How I made him a birthday card by hand once that he kept long after we broke up. Nathan said he always wondered what I was really like. I didn't take the bait. I didn't flirt or try to redirect anything. I just listened. The cracks were obvious now. He wasn't madly in love. He wasn't proud of his engagement. He was stuck. Stuck in a relationship that only looked good on the outside. Trapped under a spotlight he never asked to stand in. and she was directing the whole thing. After we left the cafe, I went home and opened my old notebook, the one I kept tucked in the back of my bookshelf. I started jotting down everything I remembered about her wedding planning. She'd mentioned venue names, which one had better light for golden hour photos. I wrote those down. I called 2 of them, asked about booking availability in a fake voice, and confirmed they both had the same date, hers. So, the location was still undecided. At the next family dinner, she made a huge show of her ring again. When there was a pause in the conversation, I lightly joked, should I sing something at the wedding? I still remember that Adele song from Cousin Lauren's party. Everyone laughed, except her. She scrunched her face and said, "This isn't karaoke night." Everyone laughed again, at me this time. I smiled and nodded. It didn't matter. That dinner gave me more than she realized. Later that week, I ran into Nathan's mother at the grocery store. I wasn't sure if she'd recognize me, but I smiled and said hello anyway. I asked if she was excited for the big day. She looked confused for a moment, then said she hadn't heard any confirmed details, no date, no location, just that it would be sometime next year. The wedding was in 4 months. That's when I decided to reach out to Nathan's younger sister. I found her through Instagram. Her page was public. I liked one of her travel photos and sent a message asking if she'd want to grab coffee next week. She replied almost instantly. We met at a cozy little coffee shop near campus. She ordered a hot chocolate with whipped cream. And there, babe. I told her I was Sabrina's sister. Her face dropped a bit. She didn't hold back. She told me Sabrina never reached out to her, not even a text. She said their family dinners were always weird when Sabrina visited. She dominated every conversation, told everyone how amazing the wedding would be, but never once asked about anyone else's life. She said her parents felt like Nathan had been distant since the engagement, that they weren't sure who he was becoming. After that coffee, I walked back home and sat down again with my notebook. Now I had what I needed. I didn't have to break them up. I didn't have to crash anything. I just had to make sure Nathan saw everything clearly. And I had to make sure he saw it all in the right place, in front of the people she wanted to impress most. Sabrina built her world like a theater set. I just had to pull back the curtain and let the lights hit the truth. The next phase had to be quieter, not slower, just more careful. I wasn't going to confront anyone or cause a scene. I was going to build something solid, something no one could spin. So I started collecting things. Screenshots from old group chats, comments she made at dinners when Nathan wasn't around, voice notes. One in particular stood out. She accidentally sent a voice memo to our family group chat while ranting to someone else. In it, she called Nathan a startup CEO in search of a spine. She deleted it within seconds, but I had already downloaded it. I didn't reply. No one did. The group chat went dead for the rest of the day. I kept the memo saved. I didn't use it, not yet. A few days later, I invited Nathan over for tea. No cafe, no cameras, no family, just my living room and 2 mugs. I kept it simple, chamomile. When we sat down, I told him I had something he needed to hear, then played the voice memo. He listened with his head slightly tilted, then stared at the mug in his hands for a long minute before quietly saying, "I knew she didn't respect me." I told him it was his choice what came next. I wasn't going to tell him what to do. I just wanted him to know the whole story. After that, he started texting, late at night. Nothing strange, nothing flirty, just questions. Stuff like, do you think people change? Or why do some people treat love like a job interview? One night, he wrote, "What would you do if someone chose you for how you look on paper?" I didn't give him advice. I didn't tell him to leave her. I just kept answering honestly. Meanwhile, Sabrina was unraveling. The wedding hair trial didn't go how she wanted. The stylist curled her hair in the wrong direction, and she reportedly cried in the parking lot. Her dress boutique made a mistake on the hem, and instead of rescheduling calmly, she called our mother screaming at 11 p.m. She blamed everyone except herself, and she started making weird comments around family, trying to make me look like a jealous outsider. At the bridal shower, she stood in front of everyone and made a toast. She thanked our parents, her future in-laws, her bridesmaids, even the florist. She skipped me entirely. Someone asked why. Jokingly, she smiled sweetly and said, "Well, some people are just here for the free food." A few people laughed. Some looked down at their plates. I didn't react. It wasn't about the moment. It was about the pattern. After the cake was served, Nathan's younger sister approached me in the hallway. She handed me a folded sheet of paper. When I opened it later, I saw screenshots. Sabrina had messaged her ex from a burner account. Stuff like, if I wasn't getting married, I'd already be at your place. There were more. A lot more. Different times, different moods. Sometimes she said Nathan was boring. Other times, she just sent vague texts like, "I miss the fun." I checked the screenshots again. Something about the layout, the font, the spacing looked familiar. I cross-checked the email address. It was a throwaway, but the formatting matched something I'd seen before. I texted Nathan's sister and asked if she had time to meet again. We met the next day. I brought coffee. I asked her plainly, "Was that you who took those screenshots?" She didn't hesitate. She nodded, said she'd seen Sabrina's screen during a salon appointment, and grabbed what she could when Sabrina left the phone unattended. She told me he deserves the truth, and so do you. Then she pulled out a printed list of all the contacts Sabrina had messaged from that account, including another guy, someone I'd never even heard of. I didn't recognize the name, but Nathan probably would. That night, Nathan asked to meet. It was different this time. His face was drawn. His clothes were wrinkled. He looked like someone who had finally stopped pretending. We sat across from each other at the park. No tea, no walls between us. He said, "If I walk away from her, she'll make me the villain. She'll twist it. She'll say I was insecure. She'll go public with it." I nodded and said, "Let her try." He didn't smile. He just leaned back, closed his eyes for a second, and said, "I need a plan." That's when it shifted. It wasn't just my web anymore. He was weaving it with me now. And Sabrina? She still thought she was the only one writing the script. With just under a month left before the wedding, Sabrina turned into a walking Pinterest board. She had 3 mood boards going at once, scheduled outfit changes for the rehearsal dinner, and was planning cinematic entrances for every event. It's from her bridal fitting to her hair trial. There was a coordinated gift exchange with matching robes, full makeup, and a professional photographer. She even assigned someone to film behind-the-scenes clips for her wedding mini-documentary. Then she posted something strange, a photo of a pearl-studded bracelet with the caption, "So honored to wear this heirloom piece from Nathan's mother. It means so much to me." She tagged Nathan's mother in it. Not long after, the post disappeared. But Nathan's cousin had already taken a screenshot and sent it my way. Under the post, Nathan's mother had commented, "I never gave you this." That was all she wrote. It was enough. The fake gesture had backfired, and people were starting to notice. Nathan texted me the next morning. He said there was a pre-wedding dinner with both families that weekend, and he wanted me there. I told him Sabrina hadn't invited me officially, but he said he'd handle it. I showed up wearing a plain navy dress and kept to myself at first. Sabrina greeted me with a stiff smile and introduced me to someone at the table as the sister who refused to get extensions for the wedding photos. It didn't even make sense, but she wanted the jab to land. I didn't respond. Halfway through dinner, Nathan's father turned toward me and asked about my latest art installation. I never posted about it online. He told me he'd heard all about it from Nathan. Across the table, Sabrina's smile twitched. Nathan stayed close to his parents and his sister, barely interacting with her unless he had to. He wasn't rude, just cold, like someone sitting next to a coworker they didn't trust. Sabrina noticed. She kept touching his arm and laughing too loudly at things no one else found funny. During dessert, Nathan's sister casually brought up the text messages again, the ones Sabrina had sent to her ex. She mentioned them by accident, pretending she thought Nathan already knew. Sabrina went pale and gave her a glare that would have sent most people running. Instead, Nathan's sister just sipped her drink. Later, in the restroom, Sabrina cornered me. She waited by the sink, arms crossed. She told me I was turning Nathan's family against her and that I was jealous because I had nothing going on in my life. I didn't raise my voice. I just told her maybe things would be easier for her if she stopped treating people like background props in her wedding slideshow. She scoffed, fixed her lipstick, and walked out without another word. The next afternoon, a courier showed up at my place with a padded envelope. Inside was a printed letter with floral borders and gold text. It was a revised wedding party role assignment. I had been officially removed from bridesmaid duties and reassigned as a guest usher. No explanation. No call. Just that piece of paper. I brought it to Nathan. We met at the same park as before. He read it, sighed, folded it in half, and tucked it into his jacket. "She still thinks this is about appearances," he said. That was when we started working on a final plan. Not to crash the wedding, not to humiliate her in public, just to show people who she really was, in her own words, her own actions, at her own event. Nathan wanted to talk to his parents first, then to his best friend, who was also his best man. He didn't want anyone close to him to be blindsided. I told him the only way to make it stick was to be fully honest. He needed to write it all down, every lie, every manipulation, every moment that made him question the relationship. He opened a shared document that night and started typing. While he worked on that, Sabrina kept performing. She posted a TikTok storytime video where she rolled her eyes and talked about bridesmaids who make weddings about themselves. She didn't say my name, but everyone who knew her could connect the dots. She did it in full makeup, with a glass of champagne, sitting in a silk robe in front of a flower wall. I didn't reply. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. Nathan didn't either. His cousin saw it and sent him a text. "She's unraveling. Do you still want to go through with this?" He replied with a screenshot of the shared document he was building. The title read, "Before I say I do, here's what you need to know." 3 days after we finalized the plan, Nathan invited his parents and his best friend Evan to brunch, no Sabrina, no distractions. It was held at a quiet place on the edge of town, a family-run bistro with no chance of running into people they knew. He showed up with a folder and a tired expression, but he didn't waste time. He laid it all out on the table, screenshots, printed messages, the audio recordings, and even a short video Sabrina once posted on her private story of him asleep on the couch with the caption, "Would you marry this?" Everyone at the table recognized what it was. Nathan's father looked like he could barely sit still. His mother whispered, "How did I miss this?" over and over again. Evan promised he'd stand by him, but warned him plainly, Sabrina wasn't going to take this quietly. "She built a brand out of this wedding," he said. "She's not going to let it crumble without fireworks." Later that day, Nathan asked if I could help him plan a quiet exit if things started to get messy. I didn't hesitate. I had already started preparing for that. The next morning, Sabrina mailed out a round of high-quality black and white photos, dramatic shots of her and Nathan in vintage outfits, framed in an old theater downtown. On the back of each photo was a quote printed in gold foil, "Real love needs no defense." It went out to extended family, old friends, even her high school French teacher. She was tightening the fantasy, just as it was starting to fall apart. That same day, I finally saw her dress in a boutique's Instagram story. Custom, huge, lace, satin, pearls. Her initials were sewn in cursive on the train, oversized, taking up nearly a quarter of the fabric. The boutique tagged the location, and I noticed Sabrina had scheduled her final fitting the following Thursday. She brought 4 photographers, not 1, not 2, 4. The boutique owner, who also did some work for local theater costumes, called me afterward. I'd known her for years. She said Sabrina refused to pay the rush fee and called her staff peasants when they reminded her about it. One of the interns apparently left crying. That same night, Nathan showed up at my apartment with a backpack and a grocery bag of essentials. He said he needed space to think. He didn't feel safe going back to the place they shared, not because of anything physical, but because he couldn't breathe there anymore without being filmed or guilted. I made up the spare bed and gave him the Wi-Fi password. He stayed quiet most of the evening and left early the next morning to meet his mentor. While he was out, Sabrina sent a mass email blast to every wedding guest with the subject line, "Updated Wedding Program." In it, she included a section titled Readings Performances and casually wrote that I would be doing a reading from her favorite poem, something dramatic about fate and loyalty. I never agreed to it. I wasn't even told about it until I saw my own name in the email. I replied with a 2-word message, "No, thank you." 15 minutes later, she responded with one line, "Don't be jealous." I didn't reply again. I didn't need to. Evan added me to the groomsmen's group chat after that. It was mostly logistics at first, suit pickup times, rehearsal dinner updates, but then one of them, a guy named Marcus who worked in PR, offered to help Nathan draft a calm, public statement in case this goes nuclear. Nathan thanked him and said he might need it sooner than later. Nathan also made a list, not of tasks of people he wanted to talk to personally before things exploded. His grandfather, his old professor who helped him get his first job, a mentor from his startup incubator. He wasn't going to let them hear it secondhand. 2 days later, we held a quiet dinner. Nathan hosted it. No Sabrina. Only people who knew what was happening. No surprises, no speeches. Just food, conversation, and quiet nods. It was calm. Strangely calm. Before everyone left, Nathan pulled me aside and handed me a sealed envelope. He didn't explain. Just said, "If anything happens, if I hesitate or if she tries something, give this to the officiant. He'll know what to do." I nodded and put it in my bag. I didn't ask what was in it, but I knew. 1 week before the wedding, Sabrina rented an entire vineyard for her bridal party. Open bar white tents, gold chairs, signature cocktails, drone footage circling above the guests, and a string quartet flown in from out of state. I didn't get an invite, but I didn't need one. I got tagged in an Instagram story someone posted, Sabrina in a white sequin jumpsuit, popping champagne and shouting over the music, "Best bride ever, no competition." Nathan was at my place when I saw it. He took one look and pulled up his phone. She texted him earlier that night, "Don't embarrass me, and make sure your loser relatives stay in line." There was another message too. It said, "I'm marrying you whether you like it or not. Everyone's already invested." That one stayed on the screen a bit longer. He didn't say anything. He just locked his phone. Evan came over later that night. He had an idea, go through with everything until the very last moment, then have Nathan walk away at the altar. Not before, not after, right in front of everyone. Nathan didn't react for a while. Then he said, "She picked the stage. I'll just make sure the curtain falls, but I need time to think it through." He wasn't being dramatic, just clear. While all that was happening, Sabrina was busy meeting with wedding planners, coordinating with vendors, and talking to a local wedding magazine that planned to feature the event as a modern love story. She gave them a photo from their vineyard shoot and told them to title it From Startup to Soulmate. Nathan hadn't approved any of it. I asked Evan to double-check if there were any legal risks in Nathan pulling out at the last minute. He called a lawyer friend. Turned out there was no marriage license signed yet. Sabrina had scheduled that for the night before the wedding, supposedly for a private, intimate moment with close family only. Nathan had never agreed to that plan. The next day, Nathan got a call from his bank. There had been a flagged inquiry related to a loan. I helped him dig into it. Turned out Sabrina had applied for a bridal loan, a big one, using both their names. He had no idea. She had filled out the paperwork with old address records and his birth date, but never told him. That's when he asked me to go with him to the bank. We spent that entire morning closing joint accounts, freezing shared cards, and putting fraud alerts on his credit. It took hours, but by noon, his financial life was locked down. She wouldn't be able to move a dollar without him knowing now. That night, his parents took him out to dinner. Quiet restaurant, just the three of them. When he came back, he told me his mother had leaned over the table and said, "We've got your back, no matter how loud this gets." His father nodded and added, "We'll handle the rest of the family." Sabrina, unaware of any of this, sent out a new mass email to all wedding guests. This time it included a revised itinerary that now listed a solo dance performance by her, choreographed, of course, by a local studio. The email ended with a line in bold, "And a surprise moment you'll never forget." Nathan read it and just laughed. I asked what she was planning. He said, "Whatever it is, it won't beat mine." That same night, I got a message from her, short, "Please don't ruin this for me. It's all I've ever wanted." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Nathan spent the next day finalizing the letter he was giving to the officiant. He wouldn't let anyone read it yet. He folded it neatly and slipped it into a blue envelope with no writing on the front. When I asked him what he decided to put in it, he said, "You'll hear it with everyone else." On the morning before the rehearsal, Nathan picked up his tuxedo from the tailor. The staff said it was one of the best-fitting suits they'd seen on a groom. He stood in front of the mirror holding the jacket and said, "It's the last costume I'll ever wear for her." Back at my apartment, we packed a backup bag, just in case. One set of formal clothes, one casual, his laptop, his passport, and a folder of printed documents. Then we made a checklist. The envelope was already in my purse. His speech was finalized. Evan had secured an Airbnb for post-wedding fallout. His parents had coordinated with a car service for a quick getaway. Everything was ready. Now all that was left was the show. The morning of the wedding was picture-perfect, clear skies, soft breeze, everything staged like a commercial. The venue was a historic mansion surrounded by trimmed hedges, marble fountains, and string lights already lit even in daylight. The staff moved like clockwork, setting up last-minute touches while 2 videographers flew drones overhead to capture aerial shots before guests even arrived. Sabrina showed up first, stepping out of a rented vintage white car in full bridal glory. Her gown was covered in hand-stitched embroidery and her veil sparkled under the sun. She didn't glance at anyone in particular, just turned her face toward the closest camera and smiled like a practiced pageant queen. Her bridesmaids followed in matching champagne dresses, rushing behind her to fix her train as she walked inside, greeting no one, waving like she was on stage. Nathan arrived 30 minutes later in a separate car. No entrance music. No one announced him. He went straight to the groom's suite. He got dressed quickly, adjusted his tie once in the mirror, then posed for a few pre-ceremony pictures with the groomsmen. Evan cracked a joke to cut the tension. Nathan gave a brief smile. That was the only break in his expression the entire time. I arrived just before the guests started filing in. My place card was tucked on a small table near the back, next to the restrooms, right behind the caterer's supply tent. It was obvious who had arranged that. I didn't react. I took my seat quietly and waited. 10 minutes before the ceremony, Evan slipped into the side aisle and handed me a small black envelope. It had Nathan's handwriting on the front. Give this to the officiant exactly 5 minutes before the vows begin. I didn't ask questions. I kept the envelope in my bag, counting down the time with my phone face down in my lap. The music started. Guests stood. The wedding coordinator gave the cue, and Sabrina appeared at the top of the aisle. Her bouquet was oversized, her smile blinding, tears forming in her eyes, not from emotion, but from the attention. She walked slowly, making sure every step was timed to the music. Phones were raised, cameras clicked. Her gaze swept the crowd, not looking for anyone in particular, just checking angles. I handed the envelope to the officiant, exactly as instructed. He nodded once and tucked it into his folder without opening it. The ceremony began a minute later. The officiant welcomed the guests, made a brief speech about commitment and shared futures. Then he paused, flipped to the next page, and said, "Before we continue, the groom has requested that a few words be read aloud, written in his own hand." Everything froze. The musicians stopped. A baby somewhere in the back made a small sound, but otherwise it was total silence. Sabrina's smile faltered. She turned slightly toward Nathan, confused, lips parted like she was expecting a surprise proposal she hadn't approved. The officiant began reading. "To those gathered today, I once believed this day would mark the start of something real. But real love doesn't humiliate, manipulate, or mock. It doesn't come with conditions or threats. It builds, it heals, it listens. And it certainly doesn't brand people as accessories for social media." There were murmurs. Guests began turning to each other. Sabrina's bouquet lowered an inch. "I cannot marry someone who treats me as a trophy. I won't continue a relationship where being seen together matters more than seeing each other. I'm sorry to those here in good faith, but I choose honesty over appearances. And I choose my dignity." Gasps. Audible ones this time. Sabrina looked around, eyes darting, still hoping it was part of some elaborate prank. She took a step forward, held out her hand toward Nathan, and laughed, sharp and thin. "Is this a joke?" She asked no one in particular. The officiant folded the letter, stepped back, and said nothing else. Nathan didn't need a cue. He turned and calmly walked down the aisle, flanked by Evan, his sister, and his parents. Not rushed, not angry, just done. I waited a beat and followed. As we passed the last row, I glanced back. Sabrina hadn't moved. Her bouquet was now on the ground. Her arms were hanging loosely by her sides. The crowd wasn't sure whether to clap, cry, or leave. Someone started whispering. Then someone else stood up to grab their bag. Within a minute, the ceremony space looked like the aftermath of a rehearsal, not a wedding. Afterward, people talked. Sabrina had banned phone use during the ceremony, but word still spread quickly through calls and messages afterward. But word still spread. A cousin called another cousin. A friend of a guest relayed it at work the next day. Nathan's quiet walkout became a story people couldn't stop repeating. Sabrina told a few people later that Nathan had a last-minute panic attack, that he ran out because he was emotionally immature. But too many had seen the letter. Too many had heard it read out loud, clearly, calmly. She couldn't spin it. The curtain didn't fall. It was pulled. And for once, Sabrina wasn't the one holding the spotlight.